So hi everyone and welcome. My name is Julia Hartley and I'm the PEI Director of Operations for Lung and SPEI. My co-presenters today will be Miles and Joanna, who are independent research consultants who have assisted Lung and SPEI with the project. Lung and SPEI is a charitable health organization dedicated to improving quality of life by preventing and managing lung disease through advocacy, patient services, education, and research. For our webinar today, we are going to cover the findings from our 2023 Community Advised Smoking Cessation project. Before I begin, and in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that the land upon which we are gathered is unceded Mi'kmaq territory. Our two provinces are covered by the historic treaties of peace and friendship. We pay our respects to the Indigenous Mi'kmaq people who have occupied this land for over 12,000 years, past, present, and future. The recordings and slide decks for today's webinar will be sent out to everyone on our listserv. Our presentation will be approximately half an hour long. We encourage you to post your questions in the chat and we will answer them following our presentation. Only the presentation portion of our webinar will be recorded and shared. This project was made possible by our funding partner, Public Health Agency of Canada. Our project received ethics approval from the Government of Canada, REB, and provincial First Nations ethics review boards from both Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. Smoking remains the leading cause of preventable death in Canada and the main risk factor for many chronic diseases. According to the 2020 Canadian Tobacco and Nicotine Survey, 12% of Islanders and 14% of Nova Scotians aged 15 and older were current smokers, higher than the national prevalence of 10%. We also understand that smoking rates are even higher among certain communities, such as low-income, First Nations, and those that identify as 2S LGBTQIA+. Because priority populations face health inequalities, these three communities were chosen as the focus for our project. Oops. Sorry, I'm just having trouble with the slides. The purpose of the Community Advised Smoking Cessation project was to first understand the needs and challenges of our three priority communities when it comes to quitting or reducing the use of commercial tobacco. We intend to use this information to collaboratively co-design needs-based smoking cessation programming with our community and government partners. In this project, lower income was defined as annual household income under $40,000. For this project, we began by conducting a rapid literature review to better understand what is known about smoking cessation barriers and enablers within our priority population communities. A series of focus groups and sharing circles were implemented, along with an anonymous online survey, to hear what community members have to say themselves about their smoking behaviors, their needs, challenges with quitting, and what they would like to see to help people quit or reduce their use. Our project aimed to highlight the voices of our priority populations. For our project, we had four sharing circles. We had four sharing circles with 33 participants in both Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia. We also had four lower income focus group sessions, two in Nova Scotia and two in Prince Edward Island. And we had four sessions with our 2S LGBTQIA+ populations. Oh my goodness, the slides are jumping around. With two in Nova Scotia and two being online. This slide here is very busy, but I just really wanted to share that we took a lot of promotion over the last several months of our project to promote our project, both the survey as well as the online focus group activities. And this is just a sample of some of the partners that worked with us and where we promoted our project. And we just wanted to take this time to thank our partners for their collaboration and support. We often had our community partners inviting us into their facilities to meet their clients where they are, which is so important. So on behalf of Lung and SPEI, I just wanted to thank you for your support. And I'm now going to turn it over to Miles to share more information on the survey.
Great, thank you, Julia. So the findings from this portion of the presentation are going to talk about the demographic information we got from respondents, and this is for both the online portion of the survey and the in-person outreach, where we also distributed the surveys. For the survey, we had 403 respondents in total. As you can see from the breakdown of our priority populations here, over half fell into the low income category. In addition, there were also low-income individuals split across our other groups as well, where we had some intersections amongst our priority populations, which I'll touch on here in a moment. For the 2S LGBTQIA+ population, we had 25 of those individuals. An additional 51, so about half, were also low income. And then if we consider the intersections with Indigenous culture as well, the Two-Spirit individuals, we had 3 of those and an additional 19 who were also low income, meaning a total of 98 people belonging in some way to that group. For our Indigenous population, we had people from First Nations, Métis, and Inuit cultures. In total, there were 14, with an additional 44 also being low income, for a total of 58. And then if we also consider the intersections with Two-Spirit, that brings us up to 80 individuals. And then lastly, our general population were those who either did not self-disclose the necessary information to be categorized into one of these groups, or they simply just didn't meet the criteria to be in one of those groups. So this is our comparison group, and there were 29 of those people. The key thing to take away here is that across all of our priority groups, about 82%, so 4 out of 5, were considered low income. This slide provides the breakdown of cigarette smoking status, so whether or not people were current or former smokers, and how often they smoked. And it also provides a breakdown of our sample across provinces. What you can see here is that the sample size was about 2-to-1 in favor of Nova Scotia. So we had 64% of people coming from Nova Scotia, the other 36 from PEI. The trends in smoking status were the same across provinces. So from the Nova Scotia side of the graph here, you can see that 4 in 5, 81%, were daily smokers. And in PEI was also the majority, about 2 in 3 were daily smokers. Recently quit, for the purposes of this question, was having given up smoking within the last 6 months. Some additional demographic information for you from our sample. For gender, just over half of the participants were men, and this includes trans men as well. For age, we had, and it's doing that, there we go. For age, we had about an even split across all of the age categories, with the exception of 65 and up. However, most of the sample came from that 25 to 34 range. In terms of income, as I mentioned before, about 80% were considered low income or having that household income less than $40,000 per year. And then within that low income group, you'll see that about 52% of the whole sample were actually making less than $20,000 per year as a household income. We asked people if they worked at a paid job in the last week, either full-time, part-time, or casual. And we found that about 1 in 3 had some form of paid employment in the last week. And then finally, we also asked people to disclose if they suffer from a disability, whether that be physical, mental, learning disability, and so on. And what we found was about 2 in 5 self-disclosed suffering from some form of disability. We also asked people about their mental health and coping skills. What you'll see here are that these two figures follow roughly the same distribution. The figure on the left is looking at mental health. Most people, about 32%, disclose having good mental health, followed by fair, and then very good and poor were about equal. The key takeaway from this figure is actually what's happening on the right-hand side, because what we're seeing is that most people are falling on this right-hand side of the figure, which translates to about 75% are rating their mental health as good or worse. Similar trend is seen with coping skills, where we're seeing most people disclosing that they have good coping skills, followed by fair, and then about roughly equal for very good and poor. But once again, since most people are falling on this right side of the figure, what it's telling us is that about 71% have rated their coping skills as being good or worse. Related to this, we asked people about past 30-day mental health treatment and substance use treatment, found that about 1/4 had been to some form of mental health treatment in the last month, and about 12% had gone to some form of substance use treatment. And then just some final pieces of demographic information for you. When we asked people at what age they started smoking on average, the average answer was 14 years old. We measured nicotine dependence using the Fagerstrom scale, and what we found was that almost half reported being high or very highly dependent on nicotine. In terms of quitting, 1/3 of our participants said that they plan to quit in the next month, and just over half had tried at some point in the last year. For vaping, about 25% roughly were current vapors, and about 1 in 5 reported vaping at some point in the past. For alcohol use, we found 1 in 5 were regular users, so that being 4 or more times a week. And then for other substance use, we asked people about marijuana and cannabis and related substances, and found that 60% had used within the last week. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Joanna to walk you through some of the other survey findings.
Thanks, Miles. So besides the demographics, the project survey explored a variety of topics, including smoking behaviors, challenges, triggers, and ideas to help people to reduce their use of commercial tobacco or quit smoking. While we can't cover everything today, we wanted to share a few key findings for the overall sample of participants. We learned that the top challenges our communities faced while trying to quit smoking were stress and anxiety, followed by cravings, peer pressure, and a lack of motivation to quit. These themes were also prominent in the focus group discussions. And as one person from a 2S LGBTQI+ community sample said, just from my own experience within the queer community, I think that we have a lot of not just external stressors, but internal stressors. 90% of our survey respondents had tried to quit in the past. For those that did but returned to cigarettes, again, we see those similar challenges as triggers to return to smoking. Dealing with life stressors, being around family and friends who smoke, or wanting to smoke when drinking alcohol. Here we also see 1 in 5 mention boredom as a reason for returning to smoking, which was another common theme voiced by focus group participants. As one person said, I find it fills in breaks. Like I don't know what I would do on my breaks if I didn't smoke. When asked which cessation programs our community members heard about before, here we see that almost half of respondents were not aware of any cessation programming offered in their respective province. So despite the existence of various programs, many community members were unaware of what supports were available to them. I'll pass it over to Julia.
Thanks, Joanna. I'm now going to talk specifically about our findings that came through our First Nations sharing circles. Oh. Give me a sec, sorry. So our first theme was the diversity of smoking experience. Participants in each of the sharing circles expressed a range of experiences with tobacco, from active smokers to past smokers, and those using alternative tobacco products such as vaping. Our second theme was around the cultural significance of tobacco. The sacredness and traditional use of tobacco, especially among First Nations and Indigenous communities, is a prominent theme. This includes its ceremonial role, its role as a gift or exchange, and as a sacred medicine. Our third theme was around the social and psychological factors. The psychological elements of smoking, including its social role, the ritualistic aspects, and the psychological battles associated with quitting, were common in all these sharing circles. Our fourth theme was around challenges and barriers to quitting. Numerous challenges to quitting were identified, including economic barriers, the influence of sharing social circles, and other life stressors. Our fifth theme was support and community engagement, an emphasis on support, community-based programs, mutual understanding, and the importance of consistent touch points, such as weekly meetings or sharing circles on a regular basis for those trying to quit or reduce smoking. And our sixth theme was around economic aspects. So both the financial struggles associated with smoking and the economic drivers of addiction, like availability of discounted products on reserve, were discussed. Sorry. And our seventh theme was alternative therapies and approaches. There's a recurring theme of openness to non-traditional methods, personalized approaches, harm reduction, and the use of alternative products like vaping and nicotine inhalers. And our eighth theme was intrinsic motivation and personal reasons, whether it's personal health, financial reasons, motherhood, or personal introspection. The underlying individual motivations for either continuing or quitting smoking were highlighted during most sharing circles. Our ninth theme was education and awareness aspects. We heard a need for broader education, especially for organizations and governments, about the cultural significance of tobacco and the challenges faced by those who smoke. And our last theme was the holistic and harm reduction approach. The circles emphasize the importance of taking a harm reduction approach to smoking cessation for individuals who are not ready to quit yet and want to reduce their smoking behavior. And I'm now going to pass it back to Joanna.
Thanks, Julia. When we ask communities what supports they would like to see to help people quit smoking or reduce their use, top responses in the survey, as shown here, and voiced during focus groups were easy access to free nicotine replacement therapy with flexible counseling options. As one participant said about the cost of NRT, it's a really hard sell. Like when you can barely afford food and you can't afford housing, dropping $150 on nicotine patches and gum is just not an option. We asked this same question for vaping and the responses were similar. Community members suggested free NRT with flexible counseling to help people quit. Over 60% of survey respondents had tried some form of NRT in the past. However, the vast majority had not attended counseling to help them quit smoking. The next two slides will cover the barriers and enablers and some of those key findings from our work. What we found in the literature review was also reflected in the survey and focus group feedback. As we heard earlier, many community members had a high physical dependence to nicotine. Most participants said they smoke as soon as they wake up in the morning, and smoking is a big part of their daily routine, making it harder to quit. We heard the packaging changes, warnings, and even price increases have not been deterrents for many. Proposed enablers to help people quit included accessible and flexible programming tailored to the unique needs of the individual, be that counseling or support in person at familiar spaces or available online in individual or group format, coupled with nicotine replacement therapy. For most community members, though, a lack of insurance coverage or a lack of financial resources meant the cost of NRT was prohibitive and they just couldn't afford it. Participants suggested free NRT may be made available on sites at locations clients visit, such as community resource centers or 2S LGBTQI+ friendly spaces, or have the ability to mail NRT to people who can't access those locations, are not comfortable visiting there, or prefer to receive nicotine replacement therapy via mail. Community members face numerous challenges tied to the determinants of health. So a lack of financial resources, lack of access to supports, including primary care or gender affirming care, literacy and employment challenges, and housing insecurity. Focus group participants spoke of concurrent substance use disorders and mental health concerns. For many, smoking cessation was a lower health priority. What participants suggested they needed was holistic care, access to care providers, mental health and addiction supports and social services like housing and transportation. They also suggested counseling be available in safe spaces clients are comfortable visiting, and requested the support of understanding and non-judgmental counselors or peers who could help individuals set realistic goals and access other needed supports. Smoking is one aspect of someone's health, and individuals may need support to deal with other concerns, such as stress and anxiety, or access to gender-affirming care and supports if those are higher priorities for them. So to help people quit, we need to consider the person as a whole and offer holistic care and support. As noted previously, our communities are dealing with a lot of stress, and smoking is their primary coping mechanism. Typically, the more stress, the more cigarettes per day a person smoked. So programs and support to develop other coping mechanisms or alternatives to smoking were proposed. For example, a walking group or incorporating animal or music therapy into programs. Smoking is socially acceptable and a normal behavior within these communities. Participants said that their friends, family, peers typically smoked as well. So it was always all around them. They had easy access to cigarettes wherever they go, and they may feel left out if they're the only one not smoking. Having restrictions on where people can smoke or having more dry events for members of the 2S LGBTQI+ community were proposed ideas. We also learned that past stigma and discrimination can increase stress levels, contributing to smoking behavior and inhibiting help seeking. Community members want to learn about the benefits of quitting and have that positive reinforcement and moral support when they choose to quit. Celebrating successes with an incentive or small reward would help keep people motivated on their cessation journey. To help address the lack of awareness of existing programs and supports, participants suggested increasing education and awareness campaigns and creating ads reflective of community members. As they said, someone like me on a poster with positive messaging of the benefits of quitting versus negative messaging and images we typically see about the damaging effects of smoking. I'll pass it to Julia.
Thanks, Joanna. So from our project findings, we developed the following 4 recommendations. Our first one was easily accessible free nicotine replacement therapy. We do understand that although this project was over two provinces and there's different services available. Our second recommendation was accessible and flexible cessation counseling delivered in partnership with community partners who work with priority population clients, as Joanna mentioned, talking about safe spaces. And our third recommendation was increased awareness and targeted promotion of existing local cessation programs and services. As you saw, close to 50% of our participants were unaware of services that did exist in their own provinces. And our fourth recommendation was holistic care and support that acknowledges the role of the social determinants of health can play in creating barriers to quitting. We acknowledged that many of the individuals that we worked with over the summer, they were experiencing many social determinants of health that impacted their ability to make a quit attempt. The next steps for our project, we have a range of knowledge mobilization activities planned for the coming months for both the public and research community, including a social media campaign, dissemination of our final report, peer-reviewed journal articles, and a conference submissions. We currently have our summaries for each of our priority populations available on our website, Lung NSPI, that are available to download. We hope that our project findings will help inform the creation and enhancement of smoking cessation programming that meet the needs of our 3 priority populations and help support them in cessation avenues. Lung NSPEI is planning to apply for future funding related to the programming in partnership with our community partners. If you are looking for more specific information on our research findings, please reach out directly. And finally, I just wanted to thank everyone for attending today, as well as our community partners. This project would not have been made possible without your support.